Presiding Officer, in a little over 48 hours, the majority of people in Scotland will in effect cease to be citizens of the European Union. I am one of those set to be stripped of my citizenship. I have no means of reobtaining it under our current constitutional settlement, my ancestry being too distant to qualify for an Irish passport. For me, this is a very bitter and hurtful experience. I struggle to imagine what Brexit must feel like for those EU nationals who have made Scotland their home. I know just as I and many others who have valued our place in the EU will be hurting, there will be many in Scotland who will welcome our departure. Over 1 million people in Scotland voted to leave, including many in my constituency of Renfrewshire South. I believe that the overwhelming majority of those who voted leave did so for honourable and principled reasons, motivated by desire to protect the interests of their families, community and country. Similarly, I believe that the 3.6 million people who voted in 2014, both yes and no, cast their vote based upon their honest judgment of what was in the country's best interests at that time. Presiding Officer, the experience of Brexit as someone who voted Remain has, I believe, given me an insight into what those who opposed Scottish independence may have been feeling as the polls narrowed in September 2014. Anxiety, fear, perhaps even a sense of unreality. I know constituents who passionately value their British citizenship and sense of British identity, often alongside an equally passionate sense of Scottish and European identity. I am their MSP too, and I will always be a staunch advocate for all of my constituents in Renfrewshire South. It is with that sense of responsibility that I approach this debate on Scotland's future, a debate which at the time of my election to this Parliament in 2016 I did not expect we would be having. I stood in a manifesto that called for a referendum on independence only should there be a material change in circumstances. The then hypothetical scenario of Scotland voting to remain in the EU but being forced to leave because of votes elsewhere in the UK was specifically given as one such material change in circumstances. I said that I would have not expected to be having this debate, and that is because in 2016 I did not expect the people of England and Wales to vote by majority in favour of leaving the EU. Had they voted as I hoped, then we would not be leaving the EU on Friday, and the threshold of a material change would not have been met. Equally, had Scotland joined England and Wales in voting leave, then I would have sought to work with colleagues to implement the decision of the people we all serve. However, the people of Scotland did not vote to leave. They voted by an overwhelming majority to remain and have taken every opportunity at the ballot box to reaffirm that decision. Scotland being taken out of the European Union against the democratically expressed wishes of the Scottish people is a material change in circumstances. We cannot simply ignore this and pretend that it didn't happen. Presiding Officer, the UK is a union state. It can exist only with the consent of its members. Scotland is not a city like London or an English county. It is a nation, a country in its own right, just as much as Ireland or Denmark or New Zealand are countries in their own right. And it is the people of Scotland who are sovereign. Presiding Officer, I'm going to turn to the question of timing which has been raised. Had the UK negotiated a form of Brexit that maintained membership of the single market and customs union, or provided for a differentiated settlement for Scotland, then it would have been reasonable to question whether a referendum was required on the timescale proposed by the Scottish Government. However, it is a UK Government's policy to pursue divergence from the single market and to leave the customs union. They have also ruled out any extension of the transition period beyond the end of this year. Therefore, there is a powerful case for people in Scotland having the opportunity to choose, in principle, independence in Europe before divergence makes that proposition more difficult to obtain. On the broader question, I'm afraid I don't have time, otherwise I would. Of the broader question of timing and the oft-repeated line of once in a generation, I will say this. In all honesty, following the referendum in 2014, I did not see the circumstances arising that would justify revisiting the question of Scottish independence in the near future, though other, more experienced heads did. My thinking was also informed by the political dynamics of the previous 50 years of constitutional politics in Scotland. Consider the following pairs of dates: 1967 to 1970, 1974 to 1979, 1988 to 1992. There was a clear pattern of SNP electoral success, movement on the constitutional question from opponents of independence, followed by reduced support or underperformance of the SNP, then the only vehicle for those wishing to express an appetite for constitutional change in Scotland. Following the devolution referendum of 1997, it was not until 2007 that the SNP became the largest party, and only by a single seat. While not a universal view, I am sure that there were many who, prior to 2014, would have forecast the SNP to go into a period of decline following a no vote. Well, that didn't happen. Presiding Officer, the events since 2014 are without precedent. Scotland has consistently returned a pro-independence majority of parliamentarians, and the constitutional settlement of 2014 no longer exists. We are a nation, we are a country, and it is the people who are sovereign, not this Parliament, not Westminster, and not the Crown. We, the people of Scotland, will determine our future, and if a majority choose, as I hope they will, independence, then Scotland will be an independent country.